just the theft of Black art for acceptable, palatable white consumption, and then how that's the root. That's literally the root of pop culture.
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now.
Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. With me is Achinta McDaniel with Blue13 Dance Company. It's a pleasure to have her on. If I can kind of summarize what she does, she is disrupting the common narratives about what people think it is to have American dance. From a cultural, kind of contemporary flair, she does it all, mixing hip hop, Bollywood, showing people what real art and what contemporary, what dance can be and should be. It is not a narrow definition, but it's much broader than that, because Americans aren't just white, just so we know. Some people may think that, but we're a lot of cultures, and you mix a lot of them within dance. So, Achinta, it was great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
So you're in LA right now, right?
I'm in LA in a cavernous, empty dance studio during COVID.
Oh, wow. Yes. So this has been, typically during this time, you usually have events. That's what you in-person events were your thing. So that's certainly been disrupted.
Yeah, especially with dance. I mean, in-person classes, live public performances, in theaters, even outdoor, all of it's been we've had to shift the way we do things. So it's been a challenge, but it's an interesting time for us to kind of create work and create dance and share it in different ways now. So.
Yeah, I always like to explore how people got down their path and if you saw this path for yourself. So I would like to ask, what did you want to be growing up and what do you want to be now?
Right. That's a good question. I always wanted dance. I mean, I'm the daughter of immigrants, and you probably know this and we've talked about this at length. It's a different kind of pressure, to sort of satisfy and be both things. So growing up I was born in New York. I grew up in Cleveland, predominantly white, super privileged upbringing, but predominantly white. So having that sort of not being too Americanized.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that a lot of immigrant children hear constantly, and especially all of my Indian friends, we can all say the same thing. Not becoming too Americanized, not dating, getting straight A's, but also my family was a little bit different in one way that I could compare maybe to my counterparts that I grew up with that were in the Indian community, which is that they really wanted us to experience art and in its many facets. So whether it was classical Indian music that my grandfather was passionate about, and I grew up in a very traditional Indian household we lived with my grandparents growing up also. So I had like two sets of parents.
Right.
So my brother, sister, and I were thrown into every activity. Again, immigrants coming to America trying to have a life that's better for their children. That's all.
I would just say this very quickly while you get into that, because without being inappropriate, I would say if I had to think about the stereotypical framing, and when someone thinks of immigrants, it's not just Indian, immigrants in general that come here, they'd be Ethiopians, wherever, West African, doesn't matter. Folks come here, they usually tell them to stay focused, do math and engineering. And if you don't, you're going to be disowned from the family. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but that's kind of.
No, you're not exaggerating that much.
So that wasn't the case. So there was that pressure, but interesting that what do you know what inspired them to give you that freedom? Because I think it's good, but it's often not something people think of. They think of, unfortunately, when people think of arts, they don't understand that the creative nature behind art is also entrepreneurial, can also wake up a lot of things in the mind. When you think about art, you can think about how you design something from a technical point of view. If you don't have that artistic point of view, can really help inform the experience of people. But people see art, I think, in a very narrow, myopic scope in terms of what it is. They think you're just going to go off and just paint something and be a starving artist on the street. How did your folks kind of have a broader view of that? And how were they informed that this is something that can play a larger role and is very important?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, it was very rare just compared to other friends that I grew up with. My father is a neurosurgeon, but he's also an incredible artist, like a painting artist. He does oils and acrylics, and he would make these massive canvases, constantly filling them with beautiful images growing up. And then my grandfather, who used to be an Air Force pilot in India in World War II, was passionate about music. So there was all these crazy kind of seemingly opposite binaries that existed, that we normally are like, oh, a neurosurgeon, he's Indian, it makes sense, he's a doctor, but also is this incredible artist and also is like an incredible chef, right? And grandfather, same thing, military, very strict, but then, and very like patriarchal kind of traditional colonized Indian upbringing, right? But then had a huge passion for all music. So we would hear constantly classical Indian music, and not just classical Indian, and Tchaikovsky, like Western, classical, all beautiful music piping out of his room at all hours, and then with his headphones on while my grandmother slept. This was just part of upbringing. So that was already kind of different than I think other friends that were growing up. And then there's what all good parents want to do is to have their children be afforded opportunities that they didn't have. So that's common with my parents. That's a normal thing. So they didn't grow up with dance classes, horseback riding, and all that stuff. It was very focused. You do this, you go to college, and that's it. You graduate, and you're done. For us,
your parents were first generation, though.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So then my mom was throwing us into every possible thing. So get straight A's, but then after school, you're going to go to enrichment classes. You're going to do ice skating. You're doing tennis. You're doing sports. Sports was not happening. I'm not the Indian tennis player like everyone else is.
But I think that's so important to expose your kids and yourself. When people say, well, I don't know what I want to do, it's because, well, you need to explore and do more things. I think everybody has some essential passion or reason for being on this earth, and not getting exposed to that, I think, is one of the biggest missed opportunities for anybody if you don't get a chance to really be aligned with your purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tragic. Like if I have friends that I joke with them. He's like my little brother's best friend. He's a wonderful hand surgeon, right? He lives in Columbus. But I'm always like, what a waste. You're such a great dancer. So just to say, like, to not let your children kind of explore, and it can be all caught up with, you have a boy and you think dance is for girls. It can be so many different reasons why. Or at the university I teach at USC, a lot of students will come to me, a lot of South Asian students or East Asian students will come to me and say, I wanted to take dance classes or dance minor, but my parents said I had to focus on school. Right. So like that, you cannot, to your point, Rob, that it exists in a vacuum and there's no room for anything else.
So I'm curious how do you help navigate someone through that? Because I'm sure that's not just the case with immigrants with India. It's the case with a lot of people who have very stern, kind of strict parents that say, I expect you to do this. You need to go to college for 4 years, major in engineering or whatever. And if you don't, I'm going to be severely disappointed in you. How do you navigate telling and empowering people? We can talk about the South Indian, East Asian community because you have some experience there, knowing the narratives and the constructs that are passed down. How do you help them deprogram through that process? Take me through a student that came up to you. I'm sure this has happened to you.
Yeah.
How do you advise them through navigating this world when they've been told by the parents this is the only way?
Yeah, so that's the tough part, is to try to find out the way to satisfy. And it really depends on like what their kind of cultural comport and background is. So it depends what I'm dealing with. If I'm dealing with a high school student who's quietly telling me, don't tell my parents this, I really want to, I don't know what to do, and I have to be quiet about it. I have to major in computer science, but what do you suggest I do? Then I have to be like, well, you can treat it delicately, but you're an adult. So even just empowering them as far as like, you're an adult, like I get it. But when mom and dad hold the purse strings and you have been, let's say, disallowed, I'm talking from like, let's talk about like a very privileged perspective. Let me talk about a person first who wasn't allowed to have a job. Everything had to do with mom and dad paying the bills, right? There was never really the threat of we'll disown you, but it was implied.
Yeah.
So
we'll take away your money.
that duty, right? And the duty and the expectation that's so ingrained in all of us is there. You better do better. I moved us here. I made all these sacrifices. I left my entire family behind, my support system. And now you better do well, make me proud, pay me back. So there's a lot of love there. So that's the thing to grapple with. I'm like, well, you want to have respect, but you have to find your path. You have to have some self-respect. You should go out there and prove, not asking permission, right? But what's the saying, Rob? Like, don't ask permission, but
ask for forgiveness.
Forgiveness, right?
Yes,
like
ask forgiveness. Never for permission. Yes.
Right. Don't. And I tell almost all of the young people who ask me this, that same thing. So in a disruptive sort of way, but also it depends how delicate it is with whether a person of privilege, or let's go to the other side, a student or young person.
But before you go there, we can start on the privilege point of view. This is my view is the view of people that I can view it from a person who went to law school and worked for a corporate firm for a while. I mean, I hated every minute of it, every second. And I wasn't going to law school for that, but I told myself, well, look, I looked at the salary, said this is good, but it's like the golden handcuffs. It's, you feel like you're doing something that you're supposed to do, but if you're miserable in your experience, you're going to be miserable, and you're gonna kind of have some animosity towards your parents. I mean, it may not be like you won't hate them or anything, but there will be this bent up animosity. And so free yourself. I tell people, free themselves from that, because at the end of the day, if you make a bunch of money and you hate your existence, what is the point?
Right. What's the purpose? And on top of it, I also always say, I totally believe that. I also say, for me, it's about leaving your mark, not in a Shakespearean way, like I want to have a canon of poetry and you revere me and know my name, but leaving your mark and and for me as an artist, it's about whatever I can be, something that I'm going through, to make something beautiful, to make something ugly that I'm going through, to really like find catharsis and process in there, and then make an individual stamp on each single person I meet, whether it's here with you and me, whether it's on the phone with somebody, whether it's with a student through an entire semester. Like, leaving these indelible marks on each other is what our entire existence is about.
Yeah.
Right? Like giving a gift, right, is because you have something to give, and every single one of us has something out there to give, right? Everyone has our own unique experiences, their unique perspectives, and also the way to find that solace in finding out that other people, that you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
These ways of thinking. So while there's your unique snowflake thumbprint self, there's also this wonderful humanity in togetherness, right?
Yeah.
And that's why even sharing art, I also, even whoever I'm talking to, but especially for younger people, right? I'm saying, talk to your parents, take them to performance, and talk about the experience of the entire audience together, of all different walks of life, inhaling at the same time, wow, at the same time, having those moments together, or even in a dance class or whatever it is, everyone reacting in the same way and receiving from whatever the artist is given. And that can be on a museum wall too, right?
Right.
How important and beautiful just those stamps are, right? Whether they're through movement or the written word or through song. So, yeah.
So what's interesting, we've talked about how you are helping people understand the full context of what it means to be in dance, to be in American dance, that is not this limited view that folks have, but this can be a challenge. I'm curious to hear a story where you've had a challenge on this. I recall when folks got all upset about The Little Mermaid, and all of a sudden they made The Little Mermaid black, and like there were all these trolls that came out, so much so that Disney, it wasn't like there was a few crazy people. It was a lot of people that responded like, how can you do this? Oh my God. She's not black, she's white. I said, first of all, hold up. It's art. It's made up. It's a fantasy. This is not, but people have in this mind what art is. That's just one example, right? They had Ariel as being only a white woman. She couldn't possibly ever be a woman of color or black. Like, oh my God, the world's going to end. Like, calm down. But anyway, I can imagine that you probably go through something like this.
Not even up in arms that it's a live action Little Mermaid. Hello, like this is the first thing, wouldn't it be if you're really reverent about the art and the origins? Wouldn't it go all the way back to the written word of that story? So for me, yeah.
But of course, it's not about that. It's about an identity people have in their mind. And and people have an identity of what classical dance and what dance is supposed to be in America. So how do you go about tackling that when people might have an image built up that is obviously based on their limited perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I love to just constantly call myself a troublemaker, or rabble rouser, or disruptor. So that's why I gravitate towards you, Rob. But really, my company's mission and my whole mission, just as a human in life, has been to change perception, right? To not let the status quo be accepted, and to challenge that. So even the company to have a shift, to help create a shift, especially about dance, but like, what do you first imagine when you hear American dance, right?
Right.
What's American dance? Oh, and you're like, okay, it's a white dance company that's performing modern dance on stage, right? Or it's maybe it's ABT, it's New York City Ballet, right?
Right.
And rarely there might be like a handful of people who think of Al Vanelli, right? Or in the dance, if I'm talking about the dance field, then okay, then that might be a little bit more diverse perspective or thinking, just because of the people that are in that sector, right?
Right.
But in general, if you ask every man, every woman, what is American dance? They're going to equate it with whiteness, and Americanness with whiteness, right? So
Yes.
just like this Ariel, Little Mermaid, just like Kamala Harris, just like anyone.
Do you remember when there was this big stink when what is that song, that the country song that the black guy made?
Oh yeah,
Old Town Road.
Oh yeah.
They were, and so literally the music genre, which I forgot what they call it, they didn't call it country because they said it wasn't. How is this not country? It's not country because it doesn't fit in what? Because why? It's very much a country song, but it kind of reminds me of what Blue13 does. It just infused some different aspects. And by the way, note, country music has a lot of roots in blackness. They just
and theft of blackness.
Right, exactly. They just don't talk about it anymore. But it's there. And people got really upset. People got upset with Wrangler jeans and said they want to stop wearing them. I mean, so much so that that Wrangler jeans had to respond to, well, we represent everybody, not just a certain sex. So I guess when you go about changing your mind, I understand your purpose. We agree. How do you tackle that in a place where people aren't sometimes in their brain yet, where they can see that this is not different? They're not receptive, but you still have to go and approach that CEO or that person to make them understand why this is something that is American.
Yeah.
That makes sense? My question makes sense?
It totally makes sense. I mean, and I could probably talk, and we teach courses about this too, about just the theft of Black art for acceptable, palatable white consumption, and then how that's the root. That's literally the root of pop culture, and it's root of so many different dance forms, right, in the United States. So when we're not thinking of Americanness because we've taken something that's been co-opted, right, and then made palatable for white audiences, come to fame, become a commodity, and become elite, right? And this is even for European ballet, right? Ballet up here as the height of all things. Hip hop, cultural forms, everything else like this. So even when people talk about it in their body languages, like when I go to dance conferences, and these are people who are BIPOC artists, right?
Right.
Might say, oh, like it's not ballet, but it's this, talking about their own work. So then I have to say, hey, especially at these conferences, if we have a forum to kind of interrogate these, hey, let's stop doing that. Let's not make our body language as dancers even denigrate our own forms, right? What's the investigation behind it? Why is this American? What does it mean to be American, an American dance maker or art maker, right? And why are you defensive? And I could be talking literally, Rob, to people where it's dangerous for me,
right?
To an agent, to a presenter, right? Like I could be talking to, I don't know, some giant hall in New York City that wants to book dance companies. But if I have the gall at a conference to say, why are you defensive when I'm telling you that on your season for the past 4 years, you've had 2 Black companies and that's it? and you've ignored entirely all indigenous people, any other forms of dance of people of color, why is that? Then you get defensive. And this is something I come across all the way through 2020, right?
That's so even in the midst of everything going on in 2020, people still don't necessarily see it. And to me, it's never been clear. Like the electoral politics, everything else, people are, and how people say like, well, I love the line that I'm not racist, and then the but follows, like but right, and then people are so defensive about it. But my response to people is that I think everybody's biased, racist, whatever you want to call it. And unless you're willing to acknowledge it, you're going to be more so. And the question is, what are you willing to do to challenge your bias and check it? And people don't want to do that. And they rather just say, like you said, I hired 2 Black companies, or I hired 2 people, and that's it. Like, okay, check the box, right? And if we ever want to get real equity, we have to go past check the box.
Mm-hmm. Well, because there has to be it's this idea of the defensiveness comes, I think, out of a loss of comfort, right?
Yep.
Loss of that status quo comfort where I don't have to think about it, that full privilege, right? I didn't have to. Now with the murder of George Floyd and the uprising and everything afterwards, it's being put more in people's faces, and they have to have the space through COVID. I'm sure you've talked about this nonstop.
Yeah.
During COVID, that they have to consume it. At the same time, that gives a lot of room for the trolls to come out too, right?
Yeah, it does.
When there's somebody in charge of the country who was
a troll.
Yeah, who's a troll?
He's a troll. I can just say that. He's
troll in chief.
Not for long. But
yay. So it leaves room for that too. But I just I always say that like that defensiveness is also the fear of losing something. Right. And regardless of where you are, how much money you're making as a family or person, the fear of listening, right, is there. The fear of loss of status and ability to sort of tell people what to do and be like the white, straight man that's in charge of the room.
Because look, you mentioned a few things that I think are important and are worth diving into. People have a false belief, a narrative that's been built up, and it's hard for people to let it go, right? When you've been, I forgot what the saying is, like I forgot what the premise of this law is, but the more you try to go after someone's identity, even if the identity is based in nothingness, the more they will resist you. And so we know that there's an identity built up in white superiority, whether they say it or not, it is. It's built up there, right? It's there, and people don't want to say it, but clearly when people get mad about Ariel and Little Mermaid, or they get upset when you try to talk about art, hip hop is very much art. It is very much art. It's art that you may not understand, but how is it not art? It is, right? And so, and I think when you get people to understand, I say for people to grow, they have to embrace being uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is why it's so hard to see growth. And people they've had these false narratives brought up about, like, you look at this whole thing after the George Floyd movement, a lot of things happened. One was, whether this was the best response or not, it's still, I agree with taking down these statues that are based upon the Confederacy. And you have people say, well, you're tearing down our culture. No, no. I said the Confederacy are against America. And people don't like, and somehow they made this image that they are for America. So it's been very difficult because some people have an image and they don't even understand the image that is built around racism. And so it's been very difficult to have this conversation because there's so many layers to it. And sometimes it's exhausting. And sometimes I don't even want to have the conversation anymore because I'm like, well, I don't want to exhaust myself, but how do you, I guess, like I'm having my own counseling session with you. How do you go about not being exhausted by the conversation and still keeping positive while not being discouraged? Because sometimes that is hard. I will tell you, for me,
it can be, exhausting and feel like you're hitting your head against the wall for no reason.
And you have to sometimes pull back and you can't say certain things because then they won't get it. But then you have to just figure out how to have the patience, and you're not the one that actually has the misunderstanding. It's the person you're talking to.
Yeah, so there's that thing that so much good stuff that you said, Rob. Like especially about the part of identity and like if you're attacking it, they feel like their identity is being attacked. But it's like I feel a constant defense, and I could try to continue to move forward through it as delicately or indelicately as the situation calls for, right?
Right.
So even like we're talking about like those kids who ask for advice, it depends what their home life is like.
Right,
like,
right.
what's going on there of the way I'm going to respond. Same kind of thing here, right? Like if it's an in-law or a family member, this is a relationship that I have to preserve as a family member. But it's important for me to interrogate things like, why did you vote for Trump? Why do you think that doesn't make you a racist or any of these things?
Right.
I'm not saying my family. I'm just saying these conversations that come up constantly about with people, the way they're voting, especially right now, right?
Yes.
So many like dancers, friends, students, whoever, like about like, okay, my aunt, my father-in-law, my this, my that, voted for Trump. Like, I don't even know how to look at this person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so then it's about, well, is it worth it to you? And then,
Right.
yes, it's worth it to me. Can you live without this person? Okay, no. Okay, so then it's worth like, what's my way in? So
Yeah.
if this is like a staunch Republican that's screaming about, I've always voted Republican, then what's your way in? Is
Yeah.
that more important, or a Roe v. Wade argument, you know? So really being armed with facts and information
Well,
and not being able to get gaslit on the way.
right. I completely agree. And I think, and let me know if I'm not saying this right, but I think what you're saying is that as you engage people to try to change their perspective, is to understand their perspective first and frame it in a way that they can understand it, to make them understand that they are not living up to their own perspective.
Yes,
Right.
perfectly said.
Right.
And also, and it might sound a little condescending, but you kind of have to spoon feed depending on.
Well, people can only take steps. It's not condescending. It's the mind cannot work all at once. You're not going to convert someone that has this belief overnight. They have it for a reason. They're around people usually that are reinforcing their own belief in God. If you're on social media, now you can just have it reinforced all day, every day, and you believe it's real.
Because you're surrounding yourself with those same like-minded people.
Right. And you get all of a sudden, you get multiple sources of content. This must be the truth. and it's a lie.
That's news. And then you're being so deeply gaslit by saying when real factual evidentiary news is presented, you're told this is fake news.
Right. But that's the beauty of art. I will say what you're saying. The beauty of art is that art has always been used in a way. It's always allowed people to say and take more controversial stances in a way that people can relate. Like, Dave Chappelle said he doesn't say anything serious without a punchline, but everything he's saying has a social context. Richard Pryor before him. You look at Stevie Wonder. A lot of his pieces, if you listen to them, they're all about social movements, and they all have some message beyond just making you feel good, making you dance. Bob Marley, same thing. There's a lot of deep material, and art can transform perspectives and content in a way that other venues can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. And that's the draw in, right? Some beautiful or ugly piece of art or dance, right? That brings the audience in. And then you're asked about it later. Well, what did this, especially when it's like a little bit more abstract, right?
Right.
Mean, or even if it's not abstract, let's say I'm doing like a full 20-person Bollywood dance number on stage, and then the question might come out, oh, that was so great. I'm interested to know why you have not that many Indian people in your company. Why are most of the people in your company Black? And this is like questions that come up afterwards.
Right.
So it just gets people interrogating in a different way to ask the question, to talk to the artist or the dance maker about their process and where they are and what it means. So then you're unveiling just deeper levels. The other part that you're fighting up against, besides the people reinforcing like through social media, like you're talking about, if I circle back to that point, is you're dealing with people who through generations and these are people that they love and respect that have taught them these things.
Right.
So when it's perceived as an attack on so-and-so, it's an attack on my mother and my father.
Right.
So they're all they can think about is me, so defensive. You're taking something from me. And
which is natural. That's how people think. People are that way.
Right. So again, like if I've made trouble at a dance conference to fight with some white people about how they never have anyone on their stages, or with agents that are like, we've satisfied our Indianness because we have classical Indian dance. And I'm like, well, I'm Indian. My work pulls from classical Indian dance, but am I less Indian or relevant to you as the agent, the gatekeeper? Right.
Because I don't fit into your box and according to what Indian artist is supposed to be.
Right. Or Americanness.
Or Americanness, exactly. Because I think that's very important, because at the end of the day, you're an American. You just happen to be of Indian descent. Like that's the whole point of America, at least I thought.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I constantly have to fight for in the art making, right? In a good way. Like that's where people.
I enjoy a good fight too. A good righteous fight, nothing better.
And that's like that's just like part of my identity. That's like where I feel comfortable, right?
Right.
I think I've talked about this ad nauseum. Probably people are sick of me talking about the tightrope metaphor.
Yeah.
That's where my identity is, and the identity of so many children of immigrants, but anyone that's an artist that has to deal with these kind of constructs and binaries, right? That you are constantly dipping your toe on both sides, trying to satisfy both, trying to get the grant money for this, trying to get the gig here, trying to show your work, and you're on the tightrope. So your identity becomes those eggshells, right? That's just who you are, are these kind of two warring opposites. But then there's some kind of comfort in there after some time. Like it's not fun when you're 14.
Yeah.
Or when, you just continue to kind of go through. And as you develop, I think, just as a human and an artist.
It's not a good transition into a question.
Yeah.
Think about advice you would give your younger self. Since you said you were 14. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing all the things you know now? And then what advice would you ignore?
Yeah, I would probably say, go dance for a company a little longer before you create your own.
Interesting. So you wouldn't have gone out on your own as quickly. Tell me why.
Maybe not as quickly, because I feel like part of it was I don't see anyone making anything that I want to see on stage or make or dance. A lot of it was that. And the diaspora thing being completely ignored in the American dance realm. But another part was fear. Straight out of college. Can I swear? Sorry.
You can swear. Yes, you can swear. So your advice would be go do it sooner or work for a company longer?
I did it a little bit out of fear. I majored in dance. What do I do?
You did what out of fear? Actually started your business?
Yeah.
Interesting. Usually people don't leave out of fear, but you started your business out of fear. Now that's new.
Talk about the eggshells, the fine line. So part of it was being brazen and young and saying, I'm just going to start my own company. There's nothing out there that looks like what I want or represents me. And then the other part of it was, I'm too scared to audition.
Oh, okay.
For Ailey, that like self-doubt, the insecurity of youth, of being an artist as a woman.
Oh, so you would have wanted to dance, in other words. Definitely. I get it.
And I did. And I've had a wonderful career, and I've danced a ton. I don't perform anymore, but like I've had a wonderful career. But I might have been like, hey, go be fearless and see what it's like, or go get some rejections, or like, and also just to see the inner workings of the company, because for me it was a lot of fake it till you make it in the beginning.
That's what everybody's is. It just is.
Yeah, it is. But I felt like if I had kind of seen some of the inner workings, it might have helped.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree, because it's intimidating. You don't know how to price stuff. You don't know how to do any of that stuff. You're making, that's the hard part, to fake it till you make it. Because then you're like, oh, well, I'm not making any profit. We got to do something different here.
Like I would price it way too high, or I would do I had no idea.
No, I mean, I get it. It's the struggle of every new entrepreneur at some point. And there is a tightrope here, because you're never going to have all the information you need. You just need enough information. Like you need probably about 50% of the information. Once you got that, there's never going to be more than that. So you just got to kind of go and move forward and step out on some faith. So look, I mean, you've had a great career, like you said. So that's actually good advice to yourself. All right. A couple of wrap-up questions here. So what's an important truth you have, might be controversial, that few people might agree with you on?
Oh, a controversial truth. Let's see. Probably that respect isn't automatic from our elders and our gatekeepers. That's where we get into the danger, and that we have to continue to interrogate that, and because that causes a lot of that can get in my way, right?
Got it.
If I just accept everything I'm told by my elders as a good girl, then I'm never going to make it. I would never be anything if I did it. So
I think that's important, because we're told to accept, and we default to the truth that's been given to us. And often we assume because they've been around or they've been successful, that doesn't mean it's the best path for us. And we don't know always how they became successful too. And it might not apply to our situation. And usually it doesn't. I've said this many times on my show. When I look at other people, their process is their process. My process is my process. Like I can't compare myself to somebody else and how they achieve, because it's different. My path and process will be different. I think there are some learning lessons you can draw from things that they did, their work ethic, but you can't try to replicate anybody's process. And
right.
And so go ahead.
Yeah. And whether they're people that are politicians or grandparents, like, I mean it to like that granular level of being like, well, do I need to, it's a little Nietzschean, right?
No, question everything. I mean, you teach people, and hope to teach my kids this too. Don't accept anything. Don't accept everything anybody says. Question everything, including me.
I love what you're saying. Yes, yeah. Rob, including the books that you're given, including religion. Like, that's very dangerous territory, but
but it's true, because if you don't, they'll have, the books are filled with religious leaders, cult leaders that have led people off of cliffs, massive, horrible tragedies. I mean, people use, you know this, I mean, I'm sure you do, people use religion to justify all types of atrocities. And we were supposed to be following the elders. And we did this because our religion told us to, and your religion didn't tell you to. Like, somebody used it as a power play. This is why we have to question everything.
Yeah.
So
totally. And I think like the root of it is that sort of escaping the herd. It's really simple. Don't be lazy. Do your fucking homework.
It's simple, but it's not easy though. It's very, very difficult for the human brain. The human brain is wired to be working with its tribe. Like, we are interdependent creatures. Therefore, we believe, and actually our brain, the science shows that our brains literally are rewired by the people we hang around, which is why it's so important to hang around the right people, because you're going to be like the people that you hang around no matter what. Right.
And totally. And like be okay with the uncertainty that happens with that, right? Or like okay with, I was given this religion, but I'm going to read about Buddhism and this.
Absolutely.
And like arm yourself with what, the enemy is thinking. like arm yourself with that if you're going to make any.
And arm yourself with great knowledge. I mean, there is some great knowledge within all text, and you can learn something, and there's no threat to me from learning from other people and teaching. So, but that takes security in yourself though. That takes security and being comfortable, being uncomfortable. So it's just, a lot of people are not that. And people look at my friends. I mean, I'm sure I have a very diverse set of friends, more than most. And it's because that's always been my experience. Another question. So what if you have 3 people on your committee? This is a committee that advises you on life, business, whatever you want. They can be living, they can be dead, anybody through history. Who would these 3 people be in life?
3 people on my committee. Oh my goodness.
Your committee for life.
Oh, my life committee. Let's see. My brother, Jackaran.
Okay.
He's a living person. He's just brilliant thinker, and gives me a lot of pushback too. So that's
good. He wounds you with the truth.
Right. I'm not his boss, and he's just a brilliant mind and inventive thinker. And can like temper my storm a little bit.
All right. Who else you got? 2 others.
I have. Let's go with Siddharth. Let's go with the Buddha, for obvious reasons, I think.
Well, tell your reasons, because people may not know.
Well, I think just to travel down that we're talking so much about tightropes, but travel down this path of not equating materialism and material wealth with happiness and self-fulfillment and enlightenment, yeah, and to really look inwards and live a simple, kind life, right? To just exert human kindness on a daily level.
Okay.
Yeah. Why is
Who's your
that?
third?
I need a woman. My third. Who's my third gonna be? My God. Put me on the spot, Rob.
Sorry.
Let's see. One is a dancer.
We can come back to it. So
Because I only get 3. I'm like, do I get 10?
you get 3, but you can if you want to think about it later, you come back to that, or we'll stop at 2. Let's get the final question in. So you have a billboard, Google ad that summarizes your saying, your theme for life. What does that say, and what's it say?
Oh my God. My billboard for life?
Yes.
Give me face or give me death. No, I'm kidding. That's what I say to my students when we're dancing.
What do you say?
I said, give me face.
All right. All right.
Your expression, your inner, your who you are.
That could be good. That's good.
But I think it's more this. It's the only way out is through.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's why I put it. That's why I tattooed it on my
body.
body.
Yeah. Well, good. So you actually have your saying tattooed on you. That makes it rather easy. Okay.
Go for it. Yeah, just fight through it. Fight through it and get there. You know.
Yeah. Why does that saying mean so much to you? Was there something in your life that points to that really that inspires that, or is just generally?
Not just life and career, definitely everything that we talked about, and just not being afraid of the fight, but just any adversity, tragedy, loss of loved ones. You know, you have to get through it.
Is there any moment in particular that really that stands out, where that really kind of?
Yeah, I think this is a heavy one of just the loss of my sister.
Yeah, when did you lose your sister?
In 2003.
Yeah, I lost my sister this year.
You did, Rob?
Yeah, lost my sister at the beginning of this year. Yep.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm sending you lots of love, but
thank you.
Especially when early, that's advice that I tell anyone. And I feel like part of my stamp on this earth is to help people, to be the example of going through loss like that in such a bad way, and to be able to help and be an example, to have the solace that you and I have gone through this. I'm still standing. I'm flourishing, and I can use her incredible life that I was touched with for so many years.
Yeah.
It was short and it was unfair and everything. It was a horrible thing to go through, but I think of her every day. I'm so lucky to have had her. And this is, this is something that when I can compare myself then to somebody who's had far more tragedy, right?
Right.
It all just depends on your perspective. But for me, barreling through those first few years that were really the hardest, I would not at the time you weren't thinking it, but now having gone through it for so many years and being able to realize and to tell other people that are going through loss or feeling really hopeless, that you're not alone, and don't try to compartmentalize it, try to take a deep breath and pull the strands apart, because it can feel like an avalanche, but that you can get through it. And if I can get through it, of losing my best friend in the world, then I can dance about it and talk about it and make these kind of connections with other people like you. Yeah. Which again, I always say that to him, like, what a terrible thing to have in common, but also what solace we can give each other.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And, my beliefs is I believe, she's with us still, but just to change the venue. And our goal and mission to life is to live and serve. Really, we serve the ones that have transitioned by living. and taking their legacy and telling about their legacy through our work and through what we do in life. And this is what you're doing. So, congratulations for that. And Chita, it's been an honor to have you on. And Chinta, it's been an honor to have you on.
Thanks, Rob. It's been wonderful talking to you. I could do this for days.
Yeah. Good to have you on with Blue13 Dance Company. We'll have more in the bio, and it's been great to have you on.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.